What happens when school bullies discover a quiet girl's deepest secret and try to use it against her? They had no idea they were about to mess with someone who could dismantle their entire digital lives with a few keystrokes. This is the story of how Maya Santos turned the tables on her tormentors using nothing but her laptop and a brilliant mind. Lincoln Valley High School buzzed with the usual Monday morning chaos as students rushed through the corridors, clutching coffee cups and frantically checking their phones for weekend drama updates. Among the sea of designer backpacks and perfectly styled hair, moved a figure who seemed to exist in a different dimension entirely. Maya Santos walked with purpose but without presence, her worn canvas sneakers making no sound against the glossy tile floors. At 17, Maya possessed the remarkable ability to blend into any crowd while remaining completely invisible. Her long black hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, often hiding half her face like a protective shield. She wore the same uniform as every other student at the prestigious private school: navy blazer, white button-down shirt, plaid skirt, but somehow managed to make the outfit look unremarkable, forgettable even. Her backpack, a faded burgundy canvas bag covered in patches from various coding conferences and tech meets, was the only hint that there might be more to her than met the eye. Maya had transferred to Lincoln Valley 6 months ago when her father's job relocated the family from Silicon Valley to the small coastal town of Millbrook. The transition had been brutal in ways she hadn't anticipated. At her old school, being the quiet tech kid had been perfectly acceptable, even respected. Here, in this world of old money and social hierarchies, her passion for computers marked her as an outsider from day one. She navigated the hallways like a ghost, timing her movements to avoid the clusters of popular kids who dominated the central corridors. Her route to the first period took her past the trophy cases filled with decades of Lincoln Valley achievements, state championships, academic awards, photos of graduating classes filled with students who had gone on to Ivy League universities and prestigious careers. Maya's reflection caught in the glass for a moment, and she quickened her pace. The computer science classroom was Maya's sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in code and forget about the social landmines that seemed to explode around her everywhere else. Mrs. Chun, the teacher, was one of the few faculty members who recognized Maya's extraordinary abilities. While other students struggled with basic programming concepts, Maya had already mastered languages that some college seniors found challenging. As she settled into her usual seat in the back corner, Maya pulled out her laptop, a sleek, custom-built machine that looked deceptively ordinary from the outside. What none of her classmates knew was that this laptop contained hardware worth more than most people's cars. The processor hummed with enough power to run complex simulations. The memory could handle massive datasets, and the graphics card could render 3D models that would make professional animators weep with envy. But the real magic happened when Maya's fingers touched the keyboard. Her typing was fluid, almost musical, as lines of code appeared on the screen with the effortless grace of a concert pianist playing a familiar sonata. She wasn't just writing programs. She was crafting digital symphonies that could penetrate the most secure networks, analyze vast amounts of data, and solve problems that had stumped professional programmers twice her age. The truth was that Maya Santos was no ordinary high school student. At 13, she had been quietly recruited by a cybersecurity firm that specialized in white-hat hacking, the legal, ethical practice of testing systems for vulnerabilities. Her job was to find weaknesses in corporate networks before malicious hackers could exploit them. She had helped protect banks, hospitals, and government agencies from cyber attacks that could have cost millions of dollars and countless lives. By 15, Maya had earned enough from her freelance security consulting to pay for her own college education 3 times over. She had turned down internships at Google, Facebook, and Apple, preferring to work independently while finishing high school. Her online reputation in the cybersecurity community was legendary, though she operated under a pseudonym that protected her identity. The irony wasn't lost on her that while she was trusted to protect the digital infrastructure of major corporations, she couldn't seem to navigate the social dynamics of a high school cafeteria. In the digital world, she was respected, sought after, and powerful. In the hallways of Lincoln Valley High, she was just another awkward teenager trying to survive until graduation. Maya's parents knew about her work, of course, but they had agreed to keep it secret. They understood that being known as a computer genius would only make her more of a target for bullying. Better to let people assume she was just another quiet bookworm than to deal with the complications that would come with revealing her true capabilities. The morning passed quietly enough. Maya took careful notes in advanced placement history, solved calculus problems that most students would struggle with for hours, and participated in a Spanish conversation that showcased her near-fluent proficiency in the language. She had learned Spanish not from textbooks, but from chatting with hackers and programmers from around the world during late-night coding sessions. Lunch was always the most dangerous part of Maya's day. The cafeteria was a carefully orchestrated social ecosystem, where every table represented a different caste in the school's hierarchy. The athletes claimed the center tables, their leather jackets and confident laughter marking their territory. The drama club kids gathered near the windows, their animated conversations carrying across the room. The honor students clustered around tables covered with textbooks and study guides. Even during lunch, Maya had learned to navigate this treacherous landscape by arriving early and claiming a small table in the corner, near the emergency exit. She would eat quickly while reviewing code on her laptop, then disappear to the library before the period ended. It was a strategy that had worked for months, keeping her safely under the radar, but today felt different. There was an electricity in the air, a sense of anticipation that made Maya's instincts prickle with warning. She noticed the way certain students kept glancing in her direction, the way conversations seemed to stop when she walked past. Something had changed over the weekend, though she couldn't quite identify what. As she sat at her usual table, picking at a sandwich she had no appetite for, Maya became aware of a presence behind her. She didn't turn around immediately, hoping that whoever it was would simply move on. But the presence remained, and she could feel eyes boring into the back of her head. Finally, she turned around to find herself face to face with Brittany Marshall, the undisputed queen of Lincoln Valley High School's social hierarchy. Brittany was everything Maya wasn't: blonde, beautiful, confident, and cool in the way that only teenagers who had never faced real consequences could be. She was flanked by her two constant companions, Jessica Kim and Ashley Rodriguez, both of whom seemed to exist solely to amplify Brittany's presence. "Maya Santos," Brittany said, her voice carrying just enough volume to attract attention from nearby tables. "We need to talk." Maya's heart began to race, though she kept her expression neutral. "About what?" Brittany's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "About your little secret hobby. You know, the one you think nobody knows about. The sandwich inn." Maya's hands suddenly felt like cardboard. Her mouth went dry as she realized that somehow, impossibly, her carefully guarded secret had been discovered. She had been so careful, so thorough in maintaining her anonymity. How had they found out? "I don't know what you're talking about," Maya said quietly, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew they sounded unconvincing. Jessica stepped forward, her phone already in her hand. "Really? Because we have some very interesting screenshots that suggest otherwise. Amazing what you can find when you know where to look." Maya's mind raced through the possibilities. Had she made a mistake somewhere? Left a digital trail that could be traced back to her real identity? She had been so careful about using VPNs, proxy servers, and encrypted communications. But everyone made mistakes eventually, and Maya was beginning to realize that her time of anonymity might be coming to an end. "What do you want?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Brittany leaned in closer, her smile widening. Smart girl. You know, this is about more than just wanting something. This is about understanding your place in the food chain. You see, Maya, we've been watching you for months. The quiet little computer nerd who thinks she's too good to socialize with the rest of us. But now we know the truth about what you really do with all that time you spend alone with your laptop. The cafeteria seemed to shrink around Maya as Brittany's words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Students at nearby tables had begun to notice the confrontation, their conversations dying to whispers as they sensed drama unfolding. Maya's fingers instinctively moved to her laptop bag, as if protecting the machine could somehow shield her from whatever was coming next. You're very good at covering your tracks, Ashley said, pulling out her own phone and scrolling through what appeared to be screenshots. But you made one tiny mistake about 3 weeks ago. Did you know that Lincoln Valley's student portal has some very interesting security logs? Logs that show unusual access patterns from someone who clearly knows their way around computer systems. Maya felt her stomach drop. She had accessed the school's network exactly once, and only to check if their security was as laughably weak as she suspected. It had been a moment of curiosity, nothing more. She had been careful to cover her tracks, but apparently not careful enough. That could be anyone, Maya said, though her voice lacked conviction. Lots of students are good with computers. Jessica laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, but it gets better. You see, we did some digging. Amazing what you can find when you have the right connections. My dad works for the state government, and he has access to some very interesting databases. Corporate filings, business licenses, tax records. Want to guess what we found? Maya's blood turned to ice. If they had accessed official records, they could have traced her freelance work, her business registration, her tax filings. Everything she had worked to keep separate from her school life could be exposed with a few strategic searches. Sentinel Solutions, Brittany said, clearly savoring each word. Quite an impressive little cybersecurity consulting firm for a 17-year-old high school student. Annual revenue in the 6 figures. Client list that reads like a Fortune 500 directory. Very, very interesting reading. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Maya gripped the edge of her table, struggling to maintain her composure as the full implications of their discovery hit her. They didn't just know about her hacking abilities. They knew about her business, her clients, her entire secret professional life. How? Maya whispered, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Your business is registered under your real name, Ashley explained with obvious satisfaction. Maya Elena Santos, age 17, owner and sole proprietor of Sentinel Solutions. The same Maya Santos who happens to attend Lincoln Valley High School. The same Maya Santos who sits alone at lunch every day, pretending to be just another invisible nerd. Maya's mind raced through her options. She could deny everything, but the evidence seemed overwhelming. She could try to explain that her work was completely legal and ethical, but she doubted they would care about such distinctions. Or she could try to understand what they really wanted and hope to negotiate her way out of this nightmare. What do you want from me? Maya asked again, her voice steadier now that the initial shock was wearing off. Brittany sat down across from her, uninvited, while Jessica and Ashley flanked Maya on either side. The positioning was clearly intended to make her feel trapped. And it was working. Other students were definitely watching now, though they were trying to be subtle about it. Here's the thing, Maya, Brittany began, her voice taking on a conversational tone that was somehow more threatening than outright hostility. We've been running this school for 3 years now. We decide who's popular, who's not, who gets invited to parties, who gets frozen out. It's a system that works, and everyone understands their place in it. Except you, Jessica added. You've been walking around here like you're above all of this. Like you're too good for the rest of us. Like you have some kind of secret that makes you special. Well, now we know your secret, Ashley continued. And we know that you're not just some antisocial computer geek. You're actually incredibly successful, incredibly talented, and incredibly rich. Which means you've been lying to everyone here for months. Maya felt a surge of anger cutting through her fear. I never lied to anyone. I just kept my private life. Private? That's not the same thing. Oh, but it is, Brittany said, her smile turning predatory. You see, when you're sitting on a secret this big, it affects the entire social ecosystem. People make assumptions about you based on incomplete information. They treat you a certain way because they think you're one thing, when you're actually something completely different. That's not my fault, Maya protested. I never asked anyone to make assumptions about me. No, but you certainly didn't correct them either, Jessica said. You let people think you were just another awkward scholarship kid when you're actually probably richer than half the students here. You let people ignore you when you could have been one of the most popular kids in school. Maya stared at them in disbelief. Is that what you think? That I wanted to be popular? That I was somehow hiding my success because I was embarrassed by it, weren't you? Ashley asked. I mean, why else would you keep it a secret? Most people would be bragging about something like this. Most people would want everyone to know how successful they are. Because it's none of anyone's business, Maya said, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself and lowered it. Again, because I came here to finish high school, not to be treated like some kind of circus attraction. Because I've seen what happens to people who don't fit into neat little categories. Well, now you don't have a choice, Brittany said, leaning back in her chair. Because we know, and we have proof, and we can make sure everyone else knows too. The question is whether that happens on our terms or on yours. Maya felt the walls closing in around her. She had spent months carefully constructing a life where she could exist in two separate worlds. The digital realm where she was respected and successful, and the physical world where she could be anonymous and left alone. Now those worlds were colliding in the worst possible way. What do you want? Maya asked for the third time, though she was beginning to suspect she already knew the answer. Simple, Brittany said. We want you to remember your place. You may be some kind of computer genius, but you're still just a student here. You still have to live by the same rules as everyone else. And one of those rules is that you don't get to be successful and invisible at the same time. We're not asking for much, Jessica added. Just a little cooperation. A little acknowledgement that we're the ones who run things around here. Maybe some help with a few small projects that could benefit from your particular skill set. Maya's blood ran cold. They weren't just threatening to expose her secret. They were trying to recruit her as their personal hacker. They wanted to use her abilities for their own purposes, probably to gather information on other students or to settle petty social scores. I won't do anything illegal, Maya said firmly. And I won't use my skills to hurt other people. Who said anything illegal? Ashley asked innocently. We're just talking about leveling the playing field. Making sure we have access to the same kind of information that you obviously have access to. After all, turnabout is fair play, right? Besides, Brittany added, it's not like you really have a choice. We could make your life very difficult if we wanted to. Imagine what would happen if everyone knew that the quiet little computer nerd was actually a millionaire who's been slumming it with the rest of us. Imagine how that would change the way people look at you. Maya could imagine it all too well. She would become either an object of curiosity or a target for resentment. Students who had ignored her would suddenly want to be her friend, but only because of what they thought they could get from her. Others would hate her for deceiving them, even though she had never actually lied about anything. I need time to think, Maya said, though she was already calculating her options. None of them were good. "Of course," Brittany said, standing up from the table. "Take all the time you need. But remember, Maya, secrets have a way of coming out. Eventually. It's much better when they come out on your terms rather than someone else's." As the three girls walked away, Maya sat alone at her table, staring at her untouched sandwich and trying to process what had just happened. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling around her, and she had no idea how to stop it. The rest of the lunch period passed in a blur of paranoid awareness. Maya could feel eyes on her from every direction, though she couldn't tell if it was real or just her heightened anxiety making her imagine threats where none existed. She packed up her laptop with trembling hands, her mind racing through potential escape routes and damage control strategies. The afternoon classes were torture. Maya sat through advanced placement literature, supposedly analyzing the themes of power and corruption in Macbeth, while her own real-world drama involving power and corruption played out in her head. She found herself staring at her classmates, wondering who else might know her secret, who else might be watching her with new eyes. In physics, she mechanically worked through problems involving electromagnetic fields and wave propagation, subjects that would normally fascinate her. But today, all she could think about was how electromagnetic signals could be intercepted, how digital communications could be traced, how even the most carefully constructed privacy could be shattered by someone with enough determination and the right connections. By the time the final bell rang, Maya had made her decision. She couldn't let Brittany and her friends control her narrative. She needed to take action, but it had to be smart, calculated, and completely legal. She had built her entire professional reputation on ethical hacking and responsible disclosure of security vulnerabilities. She wasn't about to throw that away for a high school social crisis. Maya made her way to the school library, a vast space filled with towering shelves and quiet study nooks. It was one of the few places in the school where she felt truly safe, surrounded by books and knowledge and the soft hum of computers. She found an empty table in the corner, far from the main circulation area, and opened her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she began to research everything she could about Brittany Marshall, Jessica Kim, and Ashley Rodriguez. She wasn't planning to hack into their personal accounts or access their private information illegally. Instead, she was conducting what cybersecurity professionals called open-source intelligence gathering, using publicly available information to build a comprehensive picture of her targets. Within an hour, Maya had assembled detailed profiles of all three girls. Brittany's father was a prominent real estate developer who had been involved in several controversial projects that had displaced low-income families. Her mother was a former beauty queen who now ran a high-end boutique that catered to wealthy clients. The family lived in a mansion worth several $1 million and owned homes in 3 different states. Jessica's father worked for the state government, as she had mentioned, but Maya's research revealed that he was currently under investigation for potential conflicts of interest involving contracts awarded to companies owned by his friends and family members. The investigation was still ongoing, but local newspapers had been following the story closely. Ashley's family background was more complex. Her father was a successful plastic surgeon, but her mother had a history of substance abuse that had been documented in several police reports and court filings. The family had been involved in a messy divorce proceeding 2 years earlier, during which numerous embarrassing details had become part of the public record. Maya stared at the information on her screen, feeling a mix of satisfaction and unease. She had found enough material to potentially embarrass all 3 girls, but using it would make her no better than them. It would be playing their game by their rules, and she refused to sink to that level. Instead, she began to think about the problem from a different angle. Brittany and her friends had discovered Maya's secret by exploiting weaknesses in the school security system and by using family connections to access government databases. That suggested they were not as tech-savvy as they pretended to be. They had relied on brute force and social engineering rather than actual hacking skills. Maya began to analyze the school's network architecture, looking for the specific vulnerabilities that had allowed her activities to be traced. She had been careful to use VPNs and proxy servers, but she had made one crucial mistake. She had accessed the school's network from her personal laptop, which was registered to her real name on the school's Wi-Fi system. The security logs would have shown an unusual access pattern from a device belonging to Maya Santos, followed by sophisticated network probing that was far beyond the capabilities of a typical student. Anyone with access to those logs and the knowledge to interpret them correctly could have connected the dots. But Maya realized something else as she studied the logs. The access to this information would have required administrative privileges that Jessica's father shouldn't have had, even with his government connections. Someone had either exceeded their authorized access or had collaborated with school administrators to obtain the information. This was potentially a much bigger problem than just 3 mean girls trying to blackmail her. If government employees were using their positions to access private information for personal purposes, that was a serious federal crime. If school administrators were sharing confidential student data without proper authorization, that was a violation of numerous privacy laws. Maya felt a surge of righteous anger. She had been careful to conduct all of her professional activities legally and ethically, only to be threatened by people who had apparently violated multiple laws and regulations in their attempt to dig up dirt on her. She began to document everything. The timeline of events, the specific information that had been accessed, the legal requirements for handling student data, and the potential violations that had occurred. She was building a case, not for revenge, but for justice. As she worked, Maya became aware of someone approaching her table. She looked up to see David Chun, a quiet boy from her computer science class who had always seemed friendly but had never really tried to start a conversation with her. He was carrying a stack of books and looked nervous. "Maya," he said quietly, "can I sit down? I think we need to talk." Maya hesitated, then nodded toward the empty chair across from her. David sat down and looked around nervously before leaning forward. "I couldn't help but notice what happened at lunch today," he said, "with Brittany and her friends. I know it's none of my business, but I thought you should know that they've been asking questions about you for weeks." Maya's stomach clenched. "What kind of questions?" "Technical stuff mostly. They wanted to know if you were really as good with computers as you seemed. They asked about your laptop, about the programs you use, about whether you ever did anything that seemed suspicious or unusual." "What did you tell them?" David looked ashamed. "I didn't tell them anything specific, but I might have mentioned that you were obviously way more advanced than the rest of us. I thought they were just curious, maybe even impressed. I didn't realize they were trying to use the information against you." Maya studied his face, looking for signs of deception. David had always seemed genuinely nice, but she had learned not to trust anyone completely. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I heard some of what they said to you at lunch, and I know it's not right. Whatever you do with computers, it's your business. And even if you are some kind of genius hacker or whatever, that doesn't give them the right to threaten you." Maya felt a small spark of hope. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. "Is there anything else you know? Anything that might help me understand how they found out about my work?" David glanced around again, then pulled out his phone. "Actually, yes. Jessica showed me some screenshots last week. She said she was doing a project for her government class about cybersecurity, and she had found some really interesting information about local tech companies." He scrolled through his photos and showed Maya a series of screenshots. Her heart sank as she recognized images of her business registration, her tax filings, and even her professional website. Someone had conducted a thorough investigation into her background, far beyond what would be reasonable for a school project. "Did she say where she got these?" Maya asked. She said her dad helped her with the research. Something about teaching her how to use government databases for legitimate purposes. But Maya, I've taken government classes before, and this doesn't look like any school project I've ever seen. Maya nodded grimly. The evidence was mounting that Jessica's father had abused his position to access confidential information. But she needed more proof before she could take action. David, she said carefully, can you do me a favor? Can you find out if anyone else knows about this? If they've shared these screenshots with other students? I can try, David said. But Maya, you should know that they're planning something. I heard them talking about making a big announcement. Something about showing everyone who you really are. Maya's blood ran cold. If they were planning to expose her publicly, she was running out of time. She needed to act quickly, but she also needed to be smart about it. Thank you for telling me, she said. I really appreciate it. David stood up, then hesitated. Maya, I don't know what you're going to do, but please be careful. These girls have a lot of influence, and they don't like it when people fight back. After he left, Maya sat alone with her laptop, staring at the evidence she had gathered. She had enough information to potentially turn the tables on her tormentors, but she needed to decide how to use it. The next few hours would determine whether she would remain a victim or become something else entirely. Maya walked home through the tree-lined streets of Millbrook, her mind churning with possibilities and plans. The October air carried the scent of fallen leaves and the faint salt tang from the nearby ocean, but she barely noticed. Her laptop bag felt heavier than usual, weighed down not just by the machine inside, but by the enormous decision she had to make. Her house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, a modest two-story colonial that her parents had chosen specifically for its privacy, and the converted garage that now served as Maya's home office. As she approached the front door, she could hear the familiar sounds of her mother's virtual piano lesson drifting through the windows. Dr. Elena Santos taught music theory at the local community college, but she supplemented her income by giving private lessons online to students around the world. Maya slipped inside quietly, not wanting to interrupt her mother's lesson. She could hear her father's voice coming from his study, where he was conducting another in his endless series of video conferences with colleagues at the pharmaceutical company where he worked as a research scientist. Dr. Miguel Santos had taken the transfer to Millbrook reluctantly, but the company had offered him a significant promotion and the chance to lead his own research team. Both of her parents were brilliant in their own fields, but neither of them fully understood the scope of Maya's abilities or the complexity of her work. They knew she was exceptionally talented with computers, and they were proud of her success, but they still thought of her activities as an advanced hobby rather than a serious profession. Maya climbed the stairs to her room, her mind already shifting into planning mode. She needed to think through every possible angle before she made her next move. Her bedroom was a study in contrast, typical teenage posters and decorations, mixed with sophisticated computer equipment that belonged in a professional security firm. She had 3 high-end monitors arranged in a curved configuration, each displaying different streams of information. Her custom-built computer hummed quietly beneath her desk, its LED lights casting a soft blue glow across the room. A server rack in the corner held backup drives and network equipment that allowed her to maintain secure connections to clients around the world. Maya settled into her ergonomic chair and began to type, her fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. She wasn't ready to take action yet, but she could prepare. She began by creating encrypted backups of all her important files, storing them on secure servers that were geographically distributed across multiple countries. If her tormentors decided to escalate their threats, she wanted to ensure that her business and her clients' data would be protected. Next, she began to research the legal implications of what had happened. She had been careful to document everything that Brittany, Jessica and Ashley had said to her, but she needed to understand exactly what laws they might have violated. The unauthorized access to government databases was a federal crime, but she needed to prove that it had actually occurred. Maya opened a secure communication channel to one of her professional contacts, a former FBI agent named Sarah Rodriguez, who now worked as a private investigator specializing in cybercrime. Sarah had been one of Maya's first clients when she started her business, and they had developed a mutual respect over the years. "Maya," Sarah's voice came through the encrypted video call. "Good to hear from you. What's going on?" Maya explained the situation carefully, outlining the threats she had received and the evidence she had gathered. Sarah listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions about specific details. "This is serious," Sarah said when Maya finished. "If a government employee is using their access to conduct unauthorized background checks on private citizens, that's a clear violation of federal law. The fact that it involves a minor makes it even worse. What are my options?" Maya asked. "Well, you could report it to the appropriate authorities, but that would likely result in a lengthy investigation that would expose your own activities. You could try to handle it privately, but that's risky given the power dynamics involved. Or you could fight back using your own skills, but that could backfire if you're not careful." Maya nodded. She had been considering all three options, but none of them seemed ideal. "What would you do?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Maya, I've known you for 3 years now, and I've never seen you back down from a challenge. But I've also never seen you use your abilities maliciously. Whatever you decide to do, make sure it's something you can live with afterward." After ending the call, Maya sat in her chair, staring at her monitors and thinking about Sarah's words. She had built her entire career on ethical hacking and responsible disclosure. She had never used her skills to hurt anyone, and she didn't want to start now. But she also couldn't allow herself to be blackmailed and manipulated. Brittany and her friends had made a serious mistake when they decided to threaten her. They had assumed that her quiet demeanor meant she was weak, that her desire for privacy meant she had something to hide. They had no idea that they were dealing with someone who could unravel their entire digital lives if she chose to do so. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Her heart sank as she read it. "Hope you've had time to think about our conversation. Meet us at the coffee shop on Main Street tomorrow at 4 p.m. Don't make us wait." She recognized the tone immediately. This was Brittany, escalating the pressure and trying to force Maya into a decision. The coffee shop was a popular hangout spot for Lincoln Valley students, which meant the meeting would be public and potentially humiliating. Maya stared at the message for a long moment, then began to type her response. But instead of agreeing to the meeting, she wrote, "I'll give you my answer at school tomorrow, in person." She hit send before she could change her mind, then immediately began to plan for what would happen next. If Brittany wanted to play games, Maya would show her what a real game looked like. Maya spent the next 4 hours preparing for the confrontation. She didn't plan to hack into anyone's personal accounts or access their private information illegally. Instead, she would use publicly available information and her skills in social engineering to create a demonstration that would show Brittany and her friends exactly what they were dealing with. She started by creating a detailed timeline of Jessica's father's activities, using public records and news reports to document his involvement in the ongoing corruption investigation. She found court documents, financial disclosures, and local news articles that painted a picture of a man who had repeatedly used his position for personal gain. Next, she researched Brittany's family business, finding public records that showed several violations of environmental regulations and allegations of discriminatory practices. She also found social media posts where Brittany had made insensitive comments about students from lower-income families, comments that would be embarrassing if they were brought to the attention of the school administration. For Ashley, Maya focused on her family's financial troubles, using public bankruptcy filings and court records to document the ongoing legal battles between her parents. She also found evidence that Ashley had been involved in several minor scandals at her previous school, including accusations of cheating and bullying. As she worked, Maya was careful to ensure that all of her information came from legitimate, publicly available sources. She wasn't breaking any laws or violating anyone's privacy. She was simply demonstrating the kind of research that could be done by someone with the right skills and knowledge. By midnight, Maya had assembled a comprehensive dossier on each of her tormentors. She had enough information to embarrass them publicly, but she still wasn't sure if that was the right approach. She needed to find a way to protect herself without becoming the kind of person who used her abilities to hurt others. Maya leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes, trying to think of a better solution. She had always believed that the best defense was a good offense, but she also believed in fighting fair. The question was whether Brittany and her friends would understand fairness, or whether they would only respond to demonstrations of superior power. As she sat in the quiet of her room, listening to the gentle hum of her computers and the distant sound of ocean waves, Maya made her decision. She would give Brittany and her friends one chance to back down gracefully. If they refused, she would show them exactly what happened when someone tried to blackmail a person who understood the digital world better than they understood themselves. Maya opened her laptop and began to type, crafting a message that would change everything. The next morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Maya's mood as she walked through the parking lot of Lincoln Valley High School. She had barely slept, spending most of the night refining her strategy and preparing for multiple scenarios. Her laptop bag felt like it contained the weight of the world, and in many ways, it did. The carefully crafted message she had written the night before was saved on her desktop, ready to be deployed if necessary. Maya had dressed more carefully than usual, choosing a crisp white button-down shirt and dark jeans instead of her typical oversized hoodies. She wanted to project confidence, even if she didn't entirely feel it. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she had even applied a subtle amount of makeup. If today was going to be a confrontation, she wanted to look like someone who belonged in the arena. The hallways buzzed with the usual Tuesday morning energy, but Maya noticed that several students seemed to be watching her more closely than usual. Word had apparently spread that something was brewing between her and Brittany's group. In the social ecosystem of high school, any conflict involving the popular kids was automatically newsworthy. Maya made her way to her first period class, Advanced Placement Chemistry, where she took her usual seat in the third row. She tried to focus on the lesson about molecular bonding, but her mind kept drifting to the molecular bonds she was about to break in the social structure of the school. During the break between classes, Maya's phone buzzed with another message. From the unknown number, "Don't keep us waiting, computer girl. We have more interesting things to share if you're not cooperative." Maya deleted the message without responding, but she could feel her resolve hardening. They were trying to increase the pressure, but they had no idea that pressure was something she thrived under. Some of her most brilliant work had been completed under impossible deadlines with millions of dollars at stake. In her second period Advanced Placement Government class, Maya found herself studying the faces of her classmates with new interest. These were the people who would witness whatever happened next. Some of them had been kind to her over the past few months, offering small smiles or brief conversations. Others had simply ignored her existence. A few had actively participated in making her feel like an outsider. Maya realized that she had been thinking about this situation all wrong. She had been focused on protecting her secret and avoiding humiliation, but the real issue was much bigger. Brittany and her friends weren't just threatening her. They were perpetuating a system that allowed bullies to terrorize anyone who didn't fit into their narrow definition of acceptable behavior. During lunch, Maya deliberately chose a table in the center of the cafeteria, abandoning her usual corner spot. She wanted to be visible, to signal that she was no longer hiding. She opened her laptop and began to work, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she made final preparations for what was to come. David Chun appeared at her table, looking nervous but determined. "Maya, are you sure about this? Whatever you're planning, it feels big. How do you know I'm planning anything?" Maya asked, though she appreciated his concern. "Because you're sitting in the middle of the cafeteria like you own the place. And Brittany's been watching you from across the room for the past 10 minutes. Also, there's something different about you today. You look dangerous." Maya glanced across the cafeteria and saw that David was right. Brittany, Jessica, and Ashley were huddled around their usual table, periodically looking in her direction with expressions that mixed curiosity and annoyance. Other students had begun to notice the tension, and conversations were becoming more subdued as people sensed that something significant was about to happen. "I'm not dangerous," Maya said quietly. "I'm just tired of being treated like I don't matter." "What are you going to do?" Maya closed her laptop and looked directly at David. "I'm going to show them what happens when they mess with someone who actually knows how to fight back." At that moment, Brittany stood up from her table and began walking toward Maya, her two companions flanking her like bodyguards. The cafeteria gradually fell silent as students realized that the confrontation they had been anticipating was about to begin. "Maya," Brittany said, her voice carrying across the now quiet room, "I hope you've had time to think about our conversation yesterday. We're still waiting for your answer." Maya stood up slowly, meeting Brittany's gaze directly. "I have an answer." "For you." "Good," Jessica said, stepping forward. "We knew you'd see reason eventually." "My answer," Maya said, her voice calm but carrying clearly across the silent cafeteria, "is no." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Brittany's confident smile faltered for just a moment before returning, but Maya had seen the brief flicker of uncertainty. "I don't think you understand the situation," Brittany said, her voice taking on a harder edge. "We're not asking you to do anything unreasonable. We're just asking you to remember your place and show a little respect for the people who actually matter at this school. And I'm telling you that I won't be blackmailed, threatened, or manipulated by anyone," Maya replied. "Not by you, not by your friends, and not by anyone else who thinks they can use fear to control other people." Ashley stepped forward, her phone already in her hand. "Maybe you need a reminder of what we know about you. Maybe everyone here would be interested in learning about your little secret business." Maya felt a surge of adrenaline, but her voice remained steady. "Go ahead." The simple challenge seemed to catch them off guard. Brittany looked at her friends, clearly expecting Maya to back down at the threat of public exposure. "You're bluffing," Jessica said. "You don't want everyone to know the truth about you." "Actually," Maya said, opening her laptop again, "I think it's time for everyone to know the truth. About a lot of things." Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, connecting to the school's Wi-Fi network and activating a program she had prepared the night before. Within seconds, every student's phone in the cafeteria began to buzz simultaneously. "What did you do?" Brittany demanded, pulling out her own phone. Maya stood up, her laptop still open on the table. "I gave everyone the truth. The whole truth. Starting with how you three have been using illegal methods to gather private information about other students." Students throughout the cafeteria were staring at their phones in shock. Maya had sent them a carefully crafted message that explained exactly what had happened. How Jessica's father had abused his government position to access confidential databases. How the three girls had been using this information to blackmail and manipulate their classmates. And how this behavior violated numerous federal and state laws. But Maya hadn't stopped there. She had also included carefully selected excerpts from public records about each of the three families' information that revealed their hypocrisy and moral failings. Brittany's family's history of discrimination and environmental violations. Jessica's father's corruption investigation, Ashley's family's financial troubles and history of substance abuse. This is illegal, Brittany shouted, her face flushing. Red, you can't just hack into people's phones. I didn't hack anyone's phone, Maya said calmly. I sent a group message through the school's notification system, which I accessed using the same security vulnerability that allowed you to monitor my activities. The difference is that everything I shared is publicly available information obtained through legal means. Jessica was frantically trying to call her father, but Maya had anticipated this. You might want to tell your dad that his unauthorized access to government databases has been reported to the appropriate authorities. The FBI takes violations of federal privacy laws very seriously, especially when they involve minors. Ashley was staring at her phone in horror, reading the information about her family's legal troubles. How could you do this? This is private information. It's public record, Maya corrected. Available to anyone who knows how to look. The same way you looked up information about me, except I didn't break any laws doing it. The cafeteria erupted in conversations as students processed what they had just learned. Some were looking at Maya with new respect. Others were staring at Brittany and her friends with disgust. And a few were taking pictures of the whole confrontation. Maya could see teachers beginning to converge on the cafeteria, drawn by the commotion. It was time for the final phase of her plan. Here's what's going to happen, Maya said, her voice carrying over the noise. You're going to leave me alone. You're going to stop threatening and blackmailing other students. And you're going to hope that the authorities are more interested in your father's crimes than in pursuing charges against you for conspiracy and harassment. Brittany opened her mouth to respond, but Maya cut her off. Or, Maya continued, I can show everyone what I really found when I looked into your activities. Trust me, this was just the beginning. The silence that followed Maya's ultimatum was deafening. 300 students sat frozen in their seats. Phones still buzzing with notifications, eyes darting between Maya and the three girls who had ruled the school's social hierarchy for years. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across faces that registered shock, fascination, and in some cases, barely concealed glee at witnessing the spectacular downfall of the untouchable popular crowd. Brittany's face had gone through several color changes, from red to white to an alarming shade of purple. Her perfectly manicured hands shook as she gripped her phone, and for the first time since Maya had known her, she seemed genuinely speechless. Jessica stood beside her, tears streaming down her face as she continued to frantically dial her father's number. Ashley had sunk into a nearby chair, staring at her phone screen as if she could somehow will the information to disappear. You have no idea what you've done, Brittany finally managed to whisper, her voice hoarse with rage and humiliation. My father will destroy you. He'll sue you for everything you're worth. He'll make sure you never work in this town again. Maya closed her laptop with deliberate calm, the soft click of the lid echoing in the silent cafeteria. Your father can certainly try, but he'll have to explain to a court how his daughter obtained illegally accessed government data to blackmail a minor. I'm sure that will go well for his real estate empire. Mrs. Davidson, the vice principal, pushed through the crowd of students, her face a mask of professional concern mixed with barely contained panic. She had clearly been monitoring the situation through the school's security cameras and had seen enough to know that this was far beyond a typical teenage disagreement. Everyone needs to return to their seats immediately, Mrs. Davidson announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been dealing with teenage drama for 2 decades. Maya, Brittany, Jessica, Ashley, you 4 come with me to the office right now. But Maya shook her head, remaining standing beside her table. I'm not going anywhere until I finish what I started. These 3 have been terrorizing students at this school for months, and everyone deserves to know the truth about what they've been doing. This is not the appropriate forum for Mrs. Davidson began, but Maya cut her off. Actually, it is. This is exactly the appropriate forum. Because what they did to me, they've been doing to other students. And everyone here has a right to know that their personal information isn't safe from people who think they can use their parents' connections to invade privacy and manipulate others. Maya turned to address the entire cafeteria, her voice carrying clearly across the room. How many of you have been targeted by these three? How many of you have been blackmailed, threatened, or humiliated by people who thought they were untouchable? Murmur ran through the crowd as students began to look at each other, some nodding, others whispering to their neighbors. Maya could see the recognition in their eyes, the understanding that they had all been complicit in a system that allowed bullies to operate with impunity. Sarah Martinez, Maya called out, looking toward a quiet girl who sat at a table near the windows. Remember when they threatened to share those photos from your Quincy era unless you wrote their history reports for them? Sarah's face went pale, but she nodded slowly. How did you know about that? Because I pay attention. And because I've been documenting everything. Maya turned to another student. Tommy Chun, they made you give them your lunch money every day for 3 weeks, didn't they? Said they'd tell everyone about your mom's immigration status if you didn't pay up. Tommy, David's younger brother, looked mortified but nodded. The cafeteria was buzzing now as students realized that Maya had somehow uncovered a pattern of systematic abuse that had been hidden beneath the surface of their seemingly normal high school experience. This is insane, Jessica sobbed, finally getting through to her father's voicemail. You can't just destroy people's lives like this. You can't just ruin everything because you're upset about a few jokes. Maya's eyes flashed with anger. Jokes? You call blackmail and extortion jokes? You call using your father's government access to illegally investigate a minor a joke? You call systematically terrorizing dozens of students for months a joke? Mrs. Davidson had been frantically typing on her tablet, presumably communicating with the principal and possibly with school security. Maya, I understand you're upset, but this needs to be handled through proper channels. We have procedures for addressing these kinds of allegations. Your procedures have been failing students for months, Maya replied. How many reports did you get about these three? How many students came to you for help and were told to just ignore it or handle it themselves? The vice principal's expression suggested that Maya had hit uncomfortably close to the truth. In the complex political environment of a private school where wealthy parents wielded significant influence, it was often easier to minimize problems than to confront them directly. I have documented evidence of at least 37 separate incidents of harassment, blackmail, and intimidation, Maya continued, opening her laptop again. Text messages, emails, social media posts, witness statements, all gathered legally and ethically. Would you like me to share all of that information publicly, or would you prefer to handle this through your proper channels? The threat was clear, and Mrs. Davidson understood the implications immediately. A public scandal involving systematic bullying and illegal access to government databases would be devastating for the school's reputation and potentially result in federal investigations. Everyone return to your classes immediately, Mrs. Davidson announced, her voice carrying a note of desperation. This conversation is over, but the students didn't move. They sat transfixed, watching as their carefully ordered social world crumbled before their eyes. The popular kids who had seemed so powerful and untouchable were revealed to be nothing more than petty criminals, hiding behind their parents' wealth and influence. Maya could see that she had reached a tipping point. The information she had shared was already spreading beyond the cafeteria as students forwarded messages and shared screenshots. Social media posts were being created, group chats were exploding with gossip and commentary, and the story was taking on a life of its own. I want everyone to understand something, Maya said, her voice cutting through the chaos. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about getting back at people who were mean to me. This is about showing everyone that actions have consequences, and that nobody is above the law, no matter how much money their parents have or how popular they are. Brittany seemed to find her voice again, her humiliation transforming into rage. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won something here? Well, let me tell you something, you pathetic little freak. This isn't over. My family has connections you can't even imagine. We'll destroy you so completely that you'll wish you'd never been born. Maya smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. Is that another threat? Because I should mention that I'm recording this entire conversation, along with the ones from yesterday, and the ones from last week, and all the others going back to the beginning of the school year. She tapped her laptop screen, and suddenly Brittany's voice filled the cafeteria through the school's PA system. You pathetic little freak, this isn't over. My family has connections you can't even imagine. We'll destroy you so completely that you'll wish you'd never been born. The recording continued, playing back snippets of previous conversations where Brittany and her friends had made threats, used slurs, and discussed their plans to manipulate and intimidate other students. The audio quality was crystal clear, and every word was perfectly audible throughout the school. Students were pulling out their phones again, recording the recordings, creating an endless loop of evidence that would be impossible to suppress or deny. Maya had turned the entire school into a courtroom, and the jury was delivering its verdict in real time. You see, Maya said, her voice calm and measured, the thing about being a cybersecurity expert is that you learn to always have backups, and contingency plans, and documentation of everything, because you never know when someone might try to threaten you. The cafeteria erupted in applause, starting with David Chen and spreading rapidly through the room. Students were cheering, some were crying, and others were simply staring in amazement at the quiet girl who had just dismantled the school's entire power structure with nothing but her laptop and her brilliant mind. Maya closed her laptop again and picked up her bag. I think my work here is done, Mrs. Davidson. I'll be in the computer lab if you need me. I have some actual schoolwork to catch up on. As she walked toward the exit, students parted before her like she was royalty. The girl who had been invisible for months had become the most powerful person in the building, and everyone knew it. Maya walked through the hallways of Lincoln Valley High School with a strange sense of surreal calm. The corridors that had once felt like hostile territory now seemed different somehow, as if the very architecture had shifted to accommodate her new reality. Students she had never spoken to before nodded respectfully as she passed, while others whispered excitedly to their friends, pointing in her direction with expressions of awe and admiration. The computer lab was mercifully empty when she arrived, offering her a sanctuary from the chaos she had unleashed in the cafeteria. Maya settled into her usual workstation and opened her laptop, but instead of diving into code, she found herself staring at the blank screen, processing what had just happened. In the span of 20 minutes, she had completely upended the social order that had governed Lincoln Valley High School for years. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Some were congratulatory, praising her for standing up to the bullies. Others were curious, asking for more details about her cybersecurity work. A few were hostile, likely from friends or supporters of Brittany's group, who viewed Maya's actions as an attack on the natural order of things. Maya ignored most of the messages, but one caught her attention. It was from Sarah Martinez, the girl she had mentioned in the cafeteria. Thank you for saying something. I never thought anyone would believe me about the photos. You're braver than I ever could be. Similar messages began arriving from other students Maya had mentioned by name. Tommy Chun thanked her for exposing the lunch money extortion. A girl named Rebecca Walsh wrote about how Brittany had forced her to do homework assignments under the threat of spreading rumors about her family's financial troubles. Each message revealed another layer of the systematic abuse that had been hidden beneath the surface of their seemingly normal high school experience. Maya realized that she had uncovered something much bigger than she had initially understood. This wasn't just about three mean girls picking on unpopular kids. It was about a culture of fear and intimidation that had allowed a small group of students to essentially run a protection racket within the school. Using blackmail and threats to maintain their position of power, the computer lab door opened, and Mrs. Patterson, the computer science teacher, entered with a concerned expression on her face. She was a kind woman in her 50s who had always recognized Maya's exceptional abilities and had been one of the few faculty members to treat her with genuine respect. "Maya," Mrs. Patterson said, sitting down at the workstation next to her, "I heard what happened in the cafeteria. Are you okay?" Maya looked up from her laptop, meeting her teacher's worried gaze. "I'm fine, Mrs. Patterson. Actually, I'm better than fine. I feel like I can finally breathe again." "What you did was very brave," Mrs. Patterson said carefully. "But it was also very dangerous. You've made some powerful enemies today, and I'm concerned about what might happen next." "I know," Maya replied, "but I couldn't let them continue to terrorize other students. Someone had to stand up to them, and I was the only one with the skills and resources to do it effectively." Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. "I've been teaching here for 15 years, and I've seen how certain students have been able to operate with impunity because of their family's influence. The administration has always been reluctant to take action against them, especially when the allegations were difficult to prove. That's exactly why I documented everything," Maya said. "They can't ignore audio recordings and written evidence. They can't pretend it didn't happen when there are dozens of witnesses and electronic proof. But Maya, you need to be prepared for the backlash. Brittany's family has significant influence in this community, and they're not going to take this lying down. They'll try to find ways to discredit you or make your life difficult." Maya's expression hardened. "Let them try. I've been dealing with cyber criminals and corporate espionage for years. I think I can handle a few angry rich people." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Principal Henderson, a stern-looking man who had been running Lincoln Valley High School for nearly a decade. He entered the computer lab with the measured steps of someone who was trying to project authority while dealing with a situation that had already spiraled beyond his control. "Miss Santos," Principal Henderson said, his voice carrying the formal tone he reserved for serious disciplinary matters, "I need you to come to my office immediately. We have a great deal to discuss." Maya saved her work and closed her laptop, then followed the principal down the hallway. She could feel the eyes of other students tracking her movement, and she was surprised to realize that she felt no fear or anxiety. If anything, she felt a strange sense of anticipation, as if she were finally about to have a conversation that should have happened months ago. Principal Henderson's office was a testament to institutional authority, with its mahogany desk, leather chairs, and walls lined with diplomas and awards. But Maya noticed that the man himself seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the magnitude of the crisis he was facing. "Miss Santos," the principal began, settling behind his desk with obvious discomfort, "I'm going to be very direct with you. What you did today has created an enormous problem for the school. We have parents calling, board members demanding answers, and the potential for significant legal and financial consequences." Maya remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "Now I understand that you may have felt provoked by the behavior of some of your classmates," Principal Henderson continued. "But your response was completely inappropriate and potentially illegal. You accessed our computer systems without authorization, you publicly humiliated other students, and you made serious allegations that could damage the reputations of several families. Everything I accessed was through vulnerabilities that I had already identified and could have reported through proper channels," Maya replied calmly. Everything I shared was either publicly available information or recordings of conversations that I was a direct participant in. And the allegations I made are supported by extensive documentation and witness testimony. The principal's expression suggested that he had been hoping for a more contrite response. Miss Santos, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. The school board is meeting in an emergency session this evening, and there are discussions about possible suspension or expulsion. Your actions today have disrupted the educational environment and created a hostile atmosphere that is not conducive to learning. Maya leaned forward in her chair, her voice taking on a steely edge. Principal Henderson, with all due respect, the hostile atmosphere was created months ago by students who have been systematically bullying and blackmailing their classmates. The disruption to the educational environment has been ongoing, and the only reason it's finally being addressed is because I forced it into the open. That may be true, the principal conceded, but there are proper procedures for addressing these kinds of issues. You should have come to the administration with your concerns instead of taking matters into your own hands. I did come to the administration, Maya replied, 3 different times. I filed reports about the harassment I was experiencing, and each time I was told that it was probably just a misunderstanding or that I should try to resolve it myself. Meanwhile, other students were being victimized and nothing was being done to stop it. Principal Henderson shuffled through some papers on his desk, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Even if that's true, your response was disproportionate and potentially illegal. We have lawyers reviewing your actions, and there may be serious consequences. Maya smiled, an expression that didn't reach her eyes. I have lawyers too, Principal Henderson. And I think they'll be very interested in learning about how this school has failed to protect its students from systematic harassment and how certain families have been using illegal means to gather information about minors. The principal's face went pale as he realized that Maya was not going to be intimidated or manipulated into backing down. She had clearly thought through all the implications of her actions and was prepared for whatever consequences might follow. What do you want, Miss Santos? He asked finally. I want this school to be a safe place for all students, Maya replied. I want policies that actually protect victims of harassment instead of protecting the reputation of the institution. And I want assurance that no student will ever again be blackmailed or threatened with impunity because their parents happen to be wealthy or influential. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Principal Henderson's secretary entered with a worried expression. Sir, there are reporters from 3 different news stations in the lobby. They're asking about the allegations that have been posted on social media. They want to speak with you and with Miss Santos. Maya felt a surge of satisfaction. The story was spreading beyond the confines of the school, which meant that it would be much harder for powerful families to suppress or control the narrative. No comment, Principal Henderson said quickly. Tell them we have no comment at this time, but Maya stood up, gathering her laptop bag. Actually, I think it's time for some comments. The public has a right to know what's been happening at this school. Maya walked toward the main lobby with confident strides, leaving Principal Henderson scrambling to catch up behind her. The fluorescent lights reflected off the polished floors as she approached the group of reporters who had gathered near the entrance. 3 news vans were visible through the large windows, their satellite dishes extended toward the gray October sky. The reporters turned as Maya approached, cameras immediately focusing on her slight figure. She recognized the lead reporter from Channel 7 News, Amanda Clark, whose investigative pieces on local corruption had won several regional awards. Standing beside her were reporters from 2 other stations, along with their camera operators and sound technicians. Miss Santos? Amanda Clark stepped forward, her expression professional but sympathetic. I'm Amanda Clark from Channel 7. We've been following the story that's been spreading on social media. about systematic bullying and potential illegal activities at Lincoln Valley High School. Would you be willing to speak with us? Maya glanced back at Principal Henderson, who was gesturing frantically for her to remain silent. Behind him, she could see Mrs. Davidson approaching with what appeared to be the school's legal counsel, a nervous-looking man in expensive suit who was already pulling out his phone. "I'd be happy to speak with you," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly in the lobby. "But I want to make sure that everything is recorded accurately. This story is about more than just one incident. It's about a pattern of abuse that has been allowed to continue for far too long." Amanda Clark nodded, signaling to her camera operator to begin recording. "Can you tell us what happened here today?" Maya took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts before responding. "For the past 6 months, I've been documenting systematic harassment, blackmail, and intimidation by a group of students who have been using their families' wealth and connections to terrorize other students. This morning, I presented evidence of these activities to the student body because the school administration has repeatedly failed to address the problem through normal channels." "What kind of evidence are you talking about?" asked the reporter from Channel 12. "Audio recordings of threats and harassment, documentation of extortion attempts, and proof that at least one family has been using illegal access to government databases to gather private information about other students for the purpose of blackmail." The legal counsel finally reached the group, slightly out of breath from his hurried approach. "Miss Santos, as the school's attorney, I must advise you that any statements you make could have serious legal implications. I strongly recommend that you refrain from making any further public comments until you've had a chance to consult with your own legal representation." Maya turned to face the lawyer, her expression calm but determined. "Thank you for your concern, but I'm confident that everything I'm saying is both truthful and legally protected. I've been very careful to ensure that all of my actions and statements are within the bounds of the law." Amanda Clark stepped closer, her journalistic instincts clearly engaged. "Miss Santos, you mentioned illegal access to government databases. Can you provide more specific details about these allegations?" One of the students involved in the harassment campaign has a father who works for the state government. This individual used his official access to conduct unauthorized background checks on me and potentially other students, gathering private information that was then used for blackmail purposes. This represents a clear violation of federal privacy laws and an abuse of public trust. The reporter from Channel 3 raised her hand. "Have you reported these allegations to the appropriate authorities?" "Yes, I have. The FBI has been notified about the potential violations of federal privacy laws, and I've provided them with comprehensive documentation of the illegal activities. I've also been in contact with the State Attorney General's office regarding the misuse of government resources." Principal Henderson finally found his voice. "Miss Santos, these are very serious allegations that you're making without proper substantiation. The school district categorically denies any knowledge of illegal activities, and we will be conducting our own thorough investigation into these claims." Maya turned to face the principal, her expression revealing a hint of the steel beneath her calm exterior. "Principal Henderson, I have audio recordings of the students in question, explicitly describing how they obtained private information about me through their father's government connections. I also have documentation showing that you and your staff received multiple reports about harassment and bullying that were never properly investigated or addressed." Amanda Clark's eyes lit up with the recognition of a major story. "Principal Henderson, can you comment on the school's policies regarding bullying and harassment? Have there been previous complaints about the students Miss Santos is referring to?" The principal's face flushed red as he realized he was being cornered. "The school district has comprehensive anti-bullying policies, and we take all reports of harassment very seriously. However, I cannot comment on specific cases or ongoing investigations. But you can comment on your failure to protect students who came to you for help, Maya interjected. You can comment on the fact that wealthy families have been allowed to operate with impunity while their children terrorized others. You can comment on the culture of fear that has existed at this school for years. The lawyer stepped forward again, clearly frustrated by his inability to control the narrative. Miss Santos, I must warn you that making false or defamatory statements could result in serious legal consequences for you and your family. Maya smiled, an expression that contained no warmth. I'm not making false statements. I'm presenting facts that are supported by extensive documentation. And I should mention that I've been working with cybersecurity professionals and legal experts throughout this process. I'm not some reckless teenager acting on impulse. I'm someone who has carefully planned every aspect of this disclosure. The reporter from Channel 12 looked intrigued. Miss Santos, can you tell us more about your background? Our research suggests that you have significant expertise in cybersecurity and computer systems. I've been working as a cybersecurity consultant for several years, Maya replied. I specialize in identifying vulnerabilities in computer systems and helping organizations protect themselves from cyber threats. I've worked with banks, hospitals, and government agencies to improve their security posture. And how does that relate to what happened here today? Amanda Clark asked. When I realized that I was being targeted by these students, I used my professional skills to investigate how they were obtaining private information about me and other students. What I discovered was a network of illegal activities that went far beyond simple school bullying. These individuals were using their families' connections and resources to conduct what essentially amounted to espionage against their own classmates. The lobby had begun to fill with curious students and faculty members who had been drawn by the commotion. Maya could see David Chun standing near the back of the crowd, giving her an encouraging thumbs up. Other students were recording the press conference on their phones, ensuring that the story would spread even further across social media. Miss Santos, the Channel 3 reporter asked, what do you hope to accomplish by going public with these allegations? Maya paused, considering her answer carefully. I want to ensure that no other student has to endure what I and many others have experienced. I want to show that actions have consequences, regardless of how wealthy or influential someone's family might be. And I want to demonstrate that victims of harassment don't have to suffer in silence. They can fight back using legal and ethical means. Are you concerned about retaliation from the families involved? Amanda Clark asked. I'm prepared for whatever consequences might follow, Maya replied. But I'm also confident that the truth will protect me. I've done nothing illegal or unethical, while the same cannot be said for those who have been targeting me and other students. The press conference continued for another 10 minutes, with reporters asking detailed questions about the evidence Maya had gathered and the school's response to the allegations. Throughout the questioning, Maya remained calm and articulate, providing specific details while being careful not to make statements that could be considered defamatory. As the reporters began to wrap up their questions, Maya made one final statement. I want every student who has been bullied or harassed to know that they don't have to accept it. There are people who will help, and there are legal remedies available. No one should have to suffer in silence because they're afraid of retaliation from powerful people. The cameras stopped rolling and the reporters began packing up their equipment. Maya could see that the story had already begun to spread online, with social media posts and news alerts appearing on phones throughout the lobby. Principal Henderson approached her as the crowd began to disperse. Miss Santos, I hope you understand that this situation has become much more complicated than it needed to be. The school board will be meeting tonight to discuss potential disciplinary action. Maya shouldered her laptop bag and looked directly at the principal. I understand perfectly, Principal Henderson, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. The news vans had barely pulled away from Lincoln Valley High School when Maya's phone began ringing incessantly. She glanced at the caller ID and saw a number. She recognized immediately Sarah Rodriguez, the former FBI agent who had become one of her most trusted professional contacts. Maya stepped outside into the crisp October air to take the call, seeking privacy from the lingering crowds of curious students and faculty. "Maya, I just saw the news coverage." Sarah's voice came through clearly despite the background noise of what sounded like a busy office. "I have to say, I'm impressed by how you handled that press conference. You were articulate, factual, and you didn't let them rattle you." "Thank you," Maya replied, feeling a surge of relief at hearing a friendly voice. "I tried to stick to the facts and avoid making any statements that could be twisted or taken out of context." "Smart approach. But Maya, I need to warn you, you've just painted a very large target on your back. The families involved in this scandal have significant resources and connections, and they're not going to take this lying down. You need to be prepared for a coordinated counterattack." Maya had been expecting this conversation. "What kind of counterattack?" "They'll try to discredit you first," Sarah explained. "They'll look for any mistakes you might have made, any vulnerabilities in your story, any aspects of your background that they can use to undermine your credibility. They'll hire private investigators. They'll dig through your online presence. And they'll try to find ways to make you look like the villain in this story." "I've been careful," Maya said, though she felt a chill of anxiety. "I documented everything. I stayed within legal boundaries, and I made sure all my evidence was obtained through legitimate means." "That's good, but it might not be enough. They'll also try to pressure you through your family, your school, and your business. They might file lawsuits. They might try to get your parents in trouble at work. They might even try to sabotage your cybersecurity consulting business." Maya leaned against the brick wall of the school building, processing the implications of what Sarah was telling her. She had known that there would be consequences for her actions, but she hadn't fully considered how far her adversaries might go to protect themselves. "What do you recommend?" Maya asked. "First, you need to get yourself a lawyer immediately. Not just any lawyer. You need someone who specializes in civil rights cases and has experience dealing with powerful families who think they can buy their way out of trouble. I can give you some names." "Okay, what else?" "Second, you need to secure all of your digital assets. Change every password. Enable two-factor authentication on everything. And consider moving your most sensitive data to secure offshore servers. If they're going to try to hack you, you need to be ready for it." Maya was already mentally cataloging the security measures she would need to implement. "And third?" "Third, you need to be prepared for this to get much bigger than just a local news story. The federal privacy violations you've uncovered are serious, and once the FBI investigation gets underway, this could become a major national story. That means more media attention, more scrutiny, and more pressure from all sides." After ending the call with Sarah, Maya walked slowly around the school's perimeter, using the time to think through her next moves. The parking lot was nearly empty now, with only a few cars belonging to faculty members who were probably dealing with the administrative chaos her revelations had created. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Saw the news. Coming to pick you up. We need to talk." Maya felt a pang of guilt as she realized that her parents were probably learning about the full scope of her situation from television news rather than from her directly. She had tried to protect them by keeping the details of her harassment secret, but now they were being thrust into the spotlight, whether they wanted it or not. Dr. Alina Santos arrived 15 minutes later, her face a mixture of concern and barely contained anger. Maya climbed into the passenger seat of her mother's Honda Civic, bracing herself for what would undoubtedly be a difficult conversation. "Maya Elena Santos," her mother began, using Maya's full name in the tone that indicated serious trouble. "I just watched my 17-year-old daughter giving a press conference about federal crimes and systematic harassment. Can you please explain to me how we got to this point?" Maya took a deep breath and began to tell her mother everything: the months of harassment, the escalating threats, the discovery of the illegal government database access, and her decision to fight back using her cybersecurity skills. Dr. Santos listened in silence, her expression growing more grave with each revelation. "Why didn't you tell us what was happening?" her mother asked when Maya finished. "We could have helped you. We could have contacted the school administration. We could have handled this through proper channels." "Because the proper channels weren't working," Maya replied. "I tried reporting the harassment to the school, and nothing happened. These families have too much influence, and the administration was too afraid to take action against them. But going public like this, exposing yourself to all this scrutiny and potential retaliation, that's incredibly dangerous. Maya, you're still a minor, you're still our responsibility, and now our entire family is going to be affected by this." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes as she realized the full impact of her decisions on her parents. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know I should have involved you and Dad from the beginning. But I couldn't just sit there and let them continue to terrorize other students. Someone had to stand up to them." Dr. Santos pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine, then reached over to squeeze Maya's hand. "Mia, I'm not angry with you for standing up to bullies. I'm proud of you for that. But I'm terrified about what might happen next. These people have resources and connections that we don't have, and they're going to use everything at their disposal to try to hurt us." "I know," Maya said quietly. "But I also know that what I did was right. And I have resources too. I have evidence, I have legal protections, and I have professional contacts who can help us navigate this." They sat in the car for a few more minutes, both lost in thought about the challenges that lay ahead. Finally, Dr. Santos spoke again. "Your father and I need to have a serious conversation about this tonight. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with, and we need to make sure we're all prepared for whatever comes next." Maya nodded, then made a decision that had been forming in her mind since the press conference. "Mom, I think we should also talk to a lawyer. Not because I did anything wrong, but because we need to be prepared for whatever legal challenges these families might throw at us." "Already on it," her mother replied with a slight smile. "I called your Aunt Carmen while I was driving over to the school. She's a civil rights attorney in Portland, and she's driving down here tonight to meet with us." Maya felt a surge of relief. Aunt Carmen was her mother's younger sister, a fierce advocate for justice who had built a reputation for taking on powerful interests that tried to silence the vulnerable. If anyone could help them navigate the legal complexities of this situation, it would be her. As they walked toward the house, Maya's phone buzzed with yet another message. This one was from an unknown number, but the content made her blood run cold. "You have no idea what you've started, little girl. Your family is going to pay for what you've done. We know where you live, we know where your parents work, and we know how to make your life hell." Maya showed the message to her mother, who immediately called the police. Within an hour, 2 officers were at their house, taking statements and beginning the process of documenting what appeared to be criminal threatening. "Miss Santos," Officer Martinez said as he finished taking Maya's statement, "I want you to know that we're taking this very seriously. Threatening a minor is a felony, and we're going to do everything we can to identify who sent this message and hold them accountable. In the meantime," Officer Chun added, "we're going to increase patrols in your neighborhood, and we want you to contact us immediately if you receive any more threats or if you notice any suspicious activity." As the police officers left, Maya realized that she had crossed a line from which there was no return. The battle she had started in the cafeteria that morning had escalated into something much more serious, with potential federal crimes, media attention, and now criminal threats against her family. But despite the fear and uncertainty, Maya felt a sense of clarity about her choices. She had done what was right, and she was prepared to face whatever consequences followed. The quiet girl who had once hidden in the shadows was gone forever, replaced by someone who understood that sometimes the most important battles were the ones you couldn't walk away from. Aunt Carmen arrived at the Santos house that evening like a force of nature, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, and her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the situation with the practiced assessment of someone who had spent 20 years fighting legal battles against powerful adversaries. She embraced Maya warmly, but her expression remained serious as she settled into the living room with a thick legal briefcase and a determination that filled the room. I've spent the drive down here reviewing everything I could find about this case, Carmen began, spreading documents across the coffee table. Maya, what you've uncovered is potentially explosive from a legal standpoint. The unauthorized access to government databases alone could result in federal charges against multiple individuals, and the systematic harassment you've documented could form the basis for both criminal and civil cases. Maya's parents sat on either side of her on the couch, their faces reflecting the mixture of pride and worry that had characterized their emotions since learning the full scope of their daughter's situation. Dr. Miguel Santos, who had been unusually quiet since arriving home from work, finally spoke up. Carmen, we need to understand what we're really dealing with here. These families have significant resources, and they're not going to hesitate to use them against us. What kind of legal challenges should we expect? They'll likely try several approaches, Carmen replied, consulting her notes. First, they'll probably file defamation lawsuits, claiming that Maya has damaged their reputations with false statements. Second, they might try to get restraining orders or other injunctions to prevent her from sharing more information. Third, they could try to have her prosecuted for computer crimes, arguing that her access to the school systems was unauthorized. Maya felt her stomach clench with anxiety. But everything I did was legal. I can prove that all my information came from legitimate sources, and I never accessed any systems without proper authorization. That's good, but legality and the appearance of legality are sometimes two different things, Carmen explained. Wealthy families can afford to file frivolous lawsuits and force us to spend time and money defending against them, even when they know they'll ultimately lose. It's a form of legal intimidation. Double quotes. Dr. Elena Santos leaned forward, her expression fierce. So what do we do? How do we protect Maya and our family from these tactics? We fight back strategically, Carmen replied. First, we document everything, every threat, every attempt at intimidation, every legal filing they make against us. Second, we work with law enforcement and federal investigators to ensure that the criminal aspects of this case are properly pursued. Third, we control the narrative by being transparent and proactive in our communications. Maya's phone had been buzzing constantly throughout the conversation, and she finally glanced at it to see dozens of messages from reporters, fellow students, and unknown numbers. Some were supportive, others were hostile, and a few were clearly attempts to gather more information about her background and activities. I'm getting a lot of media requests, Maya said, showing her phone to her aunt. Should I be talking to reporters? Selectively, Carmen replied. We want to maintain public awareness of the issues you've raised, but we also need to be careful not to say anything that could be used against us in court. I'll help you prepare statements that stick to the facts and avoid any language that could be considered inflammatory. The conversation was interrupted by the doorbell, and Dr. Santos went to answer it. He returned moments later with Officer Martinez, who had been investigating the threatening message Maya had received earlier. I have an update on the threat investigation, Officer Martinez announced. We've been able to trace the phone number to a burner phone purchased with cash, but we're working with the cell phone company to identify the cell tower locations where the messages were sent. We should have more information within the next day or two. Carmen immediately pulled out a legal pad and began taking notes. Officer Martinez, I'm Carmen Santos, Maya's attorney. Can you tell us what charges might be filed if you identify the person who sent the threats? Depending on the specific language used and the suspect's age, we're looking at potential charges ranging from harassment to criminal threatening to intimidation of a witness. If the threats were sent across state lines or involved federal crimes, the FBI might also get involved. After Officer Martinez left, the family spent another hour discussing security measures and contingency plans. Carmen recommended that Maya temporarily suspend her cybersecurity consulting work to avoid any potential conflicts of interest, and she suggested that the family consider hiring a private security firm to monitor their home and workplaces. "This feels surreal," Maya said as they wrapped up the evening's planning session. "Yesterday I was just trying to finish high school without being bothered by bullies, and now we're talking about federal investigations and private security." "You chose to fight back against injustice," Carmen replied. "That's never easy, and it's rarely without consequences. But Maya, what you've done is important. You've exposed a pattern of abuse that was being enabled by wealth and privilege, and you've shown other victims that they don't have to suffer in silence." Maya nodded, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and determination. "I know it was the right thing to do. I just hope I can see it through to the end." "You won't be doing it alone," her father assured her. "We're going to face this together as a family, and we're going to make sure that justice is served." As Maya finally climbed the stairs to her room that night, she reflected on how much her life had changed in the span of a single day. The quiet girl who had once hidden in the shadows was gone, replaced by someone who had learned that sometimes the most important battles were the ones that required you to step into the light and fight for what was right, regardless of the personal cost. The next morning brought a media storm that exceeded even Maya's expectations. Her story had gone viral overnight, with news outlets across the country picking up the account of the teenage cybersecurity expert who had exposed systematic bullying and government corruption at her high school. Maya's phone had died during the night from the constant stream of notifications, and when she plugged it in, she discovered hundreds of messages from reporters, supporters, and what appeared to be coordinated harassment campaigns. Dr. Alina Santos knocked on Maya's bedroom door at 7 in the morning, carrying a cup of coffee and a concerned expression. "Mia, you need to see this. The story is everywhere. CNN, Fox News, even some international outlets are covering it." Maya pulled up the news coverage on her laptop, scrolling through headlines that ranged from teen hacker exposes school corruption to cyber vigilante or victim. The Maya Santos story. The comment sections were brutal battlegrounds between supporters who praised her courage and critics who accused her of being a vindictive troublemaker seeking attention. "There's something else," her mother continued, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Your school called. They're asking you not to come in today while they deal with the media circus and conduct their own investigation into the allegations." Maya felt a surge of frustration. "So they're basically suspending me for exposing the truth about what's been happening there." "Carmen is already on it," Dr. Santos assured her. "She's filed a formal complaint with the school board arguing that any disciplinary action against you would constitute retaliation against a whistleblower. She's also been in contact with the FBI about the federal privacy violations." The Santos family had barely finished breakfast when the first reporters arrived. At their front door, through the living room window, Maya could see news vans lining their quiet street, camera crews setting up equipment, and neighbors peering curiously from their windows. The peaceful anonymity they had enjoyed for months was completely shattered. Carmen arrived shortly after, pushing through the crowd of reporters with the confidence of someone who had dealt with media attention many times before. She immediately began coordinating with the family about how to handle the situation. "We need to be strategic about this," Carmen explained, settling into the living room with her ever-present legal briefcase. "The media attention can work in our favor if we manage it correctly, but it can also be dangerous if we let others control the narrative." Maya's father looked out the window at the growing crowd of reporters and shook his head. "How long is this going to continue?" We have jobs, Maya has school, and we can't live like prisoners in our own home. The initial intensity will probably die down in a few days, Carmen replied. But Maya, you need to understand that this story has national implications. The combination of cybersecurity expertise, government corruption, and high school bullying hits several major themes that resonate with people across the country. As if to emphasize her point, Maya's laptop chimed with a notification from her encrypted email account. The message was from someone identifying themselves as a producer from a major network news program, requesting an interview about her story. Similar requests had been pouring in all morning from television shows, podcasts, and online publications. I think we should do one major interview, Carmen suggested. Something with a reputable outlet that will let us tell the story accurately and completely. That way we can control the narrative and avoid having to respond to dozens of individual requests. Maya was considering this suggestion when her phone rang with a call from Sarah Rodriguez, her former FBI contact. Maya stepped into the kitchen to take the call privately. Maya, I've been monitoring the situation, and I have some important updates, Sarah said without preamble. The FBI has officially opened an investigation into the government database access allegations. They're taking this very seriously, and they want to interview you formally about your evidence. What does that mean for me? Maya asked. It means you're now officially a federal witness in a criminal investigation. That gives you certain protections, but it also means you need to be very careful about what you say publicly. Anything you share could potentially impact the investigation. Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Will I be able to continue talking to the media? You'll need to coordinate with the FBI about that. They'll want to make sure that any public statements you make don't compromise their investigation. But Maya, this is actually good news. It means they believe your allegations are credible and worth pursuing. After ending the call, Maya returned to the living room where her family and Carmen were discussing security arrangements. The threatening messages had continued throughout the night, and Carmen had recommended hiring a security firm to monitor the house and escort Maya to any necessary appointments. There's something else we need to discuss, Carmen said, her expression grave. I've been contacted by attorneys representing the families involved in this scandal. They're already mobilizing their legal teams, and they're planning to file multiple lawsuits against Maya and our family. Dr. Miguel Santos stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger. They're going to sue us? For what? For exposing their criminal behavior. They're claiming defamation, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, Carmen replied. None of these claims have merit, but they're designed to intimidate us and force us to spend resources defending against them. Maya felt a familiar surge of determination. Let them sue. I have evidence to back up everything I've said, and I'm not going to be intimidated by people who think they can buy their way out of accountability. That's the spirit, Carmen said with a slight smile. But Maya, you need to understand that this is going to be a long, difficult process. These families have significant resources, and they're not going to give up easily. We need to be prepared for a sustained legal battle. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Dr. Santos looked through the peephole and saw a man in a suit who identified himself as an FBI agent. Carmen immediately took charge, reviewing the agent's credentials and arranging for a formal interview to be scheduled at the FBI field office later that week. As the day progressed, Maya found herself adjusting to a new reality where her every move was scrutinized and her story was being dissected by strangers across the country. The quiet girl who had once preferred the shadows was now at the center of a national conversation about cybersecurity, government accountability, and the power of young people to challenge corrupt systems. Despite the chaos and uncertainty, Maya felt a sense of clarity about her choices. She had started something that was bigger than herself, and she was prepared to see it through to the end, regardless of the personal cost. 3 weeks later, Maya walked through the hallways of Lincoln Valley High School to a reception that would have been unimaginable just a month earlier. Students who had previously ignored her existence now nodded respectfully as she passed, while others approached her with genuine gratitude for what she had accomplished. The atmosphere of fear and intimidation that had once permeated the school had been replaced by something resembling hope. The changes had been swift and dramatic. Brittany Marshall, Jessica Kim, and Ashley Rodriguez were no longer students at Lincoln Valley High. Brittany had been expelled after additional evidence of her harassment activities surfaced, while Jessica and Ashley had been quietly transferred to other schools by their families. Jessica's father had been arrested by federal agents the previous week on charges of unauthorized access to government databases and conspiracy to violate civil rights. Maya settled into her usual seat in computer science class, where Mrs. Patterson greeted her with a warm smile. The teacher had become one of Maya's strongest supporters during the difficult weeks following her public exposure of the bullying scandal, and she had helped coordinate Maya's remote learning when media attention made attending school impossible. "How are you feeling about being back in person?" Mrs. Patterson asked as other students filed into the classroom. "It's strange," Maya admitted. "Everything looks the same, but it feels completely different. I never thought I'd be comfortable walking through these hallways without looking over my shoulder." The transformation extended beyond just the removal of the primary bullies. Principal Henderson had been placed on administrative leave, while the school board investigated the administration's failure to address the systematic harassment. Mrs. Davidson had been promoted to interim principal, and she had immediately implemented new policies for reporting and investigating bullying incidents. During lunch, Maya found herself surrounded by a group of students who had once been targets of Brittany's group, but had been too afraid to speak out. Sarah Martinez sat across from her, no longer the frightened girl who had been blackmailed into doing other students' homework. "I still can't believe you actually did it," Sarah said, shaking her head in amazement. "When I saw you stand up to them in the cafeteria that day, I thought you were either incredibly brave or completely insane." "Maybe both," Maya replied with a laugh. "I definitely felt insane when I was planning it all out." Tommy Chun, David's younger brother, joined the conversation. "My parents want to thank you personally. They said what you did took more courage than most adults would have shown." Maya felt a warmth spreading through her chest as she realized that her actions had created ripple effects she had never anticipated. The school felt safer, students felt more empowered to report problems, and the culture of fear that had allowed bullies to operate with impunity had been shattered. Her phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Carmen. "FBI interview went well. They're moving forward with additional charges. Call me after school." The federal investigation had expanded significantly over the past 3 weeks. In addition to Jessica's father, 2 other government employees had been implicated in the unauthorized database access scheme. The FBI had also uncovered evidence of a broader pattern of corruption involving the misuse of government resources for personal gain. Maya's role as a key witness had thrust her into the center of a complex legal proceeding, but she had handled the pressure with the same methodical approach she applied to her cybersecurity work. She had provided federal investigators with detailed documentation of the harassment campaign, technical analysis of how the illegal database access had been conducted, and comprehensive evidence of the systematic abuse that had been occurring. At the school, the media attention had gradually died down, but Maya's story had inspired similar investigations at other schools across the country. She had received messages from students in different states who had used her example to expose bullying and corruption in their own educational institutions. David Chun approached her table during lunch, carrying a newspaper with a headline that read, "Teen Cyber Expert Testifies in Federal Corruption Case." Maya's photo was prominently displayed alongside the article, which detailed the latest developments in the ongoing investigation. "You're famous. David said with a grin. "My mom has been showing that article to everyone at her work." "I never wanted to be famous," Maya replied. "I just wanted to finish high school without being harassed." "But you did something much more important than that," David said, his expression becoming serious. "You showed everyone that it's possible to fight back against people who think they're untouchable. You proved that intelligence and courage can triumph over wealth and privilege." As the school day ended, Maya reflected on how much her life had changed since that morning in October when she had decided to stop hiding in the shadows. The quiet girl who had once preferred anonymity had become a symbol of resistance against injustice, and while the transition had been difficult, she had emerged stronger and more confident than ever before. Maya's cybersecurity consulting business had actually grown as a result of the publicity surrounding her case. Organizations across the country were reaching out to her for advice on protecting their systems and detecting unauthorized access attempts. She had even received inquiries from government agencies interested in her expertise. Walking to her mother's car after school, Maya noticed that the parking lot no longer felt like hostile territory. Students waved to her as they passed, teachers acknowledged her with respect, and she no longer felt the need to plan escape routes or avoid certain areas of the campus. Her phone rang with a call from a producer at a major television network who was working on a documentary about cybersecurity and youth activism. Maya had agreed to participate in the project as a way of sharing her story and potentially inspiring other young people to use their skills for positive change. As she climbed into the passenger seat, Maya realized that she had accomplished something she had never thought possible. She had used her technical abilities to create meaningful change in the world, and she had done it while maintaining her ethical principles and staying true to her values. The girl who had once hidden behind oversized hoodies and avoided eye contact was gone, replaced by someone who understood that sometimes the most important battles were the ones that required you to step into the light and fight for what was right. 6 months later, Maya stood before a packed auditorium at the National Cybersecurity Conference, delivering the keynote address to an audience of industry professionals, government officials, and fellow students. The girl who had once eaten lunch alone in a corner of her high school cafeteria was now being recognized as one of the most influential young voices in cybersecurity ethics. "The greatest hack isn't breaking into a system," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "It's breaking down the systems that allow injustice to flourish. Every line of code we write, every vulnerability we discover, every system we protect, it all comes down to one fundamental choice. Will we use our abilities to help others or to serve ourselves?" The audience erupted in applause as Maya concluded her speech. In the months following the federal investigation, she had transformed from a victim of harassment into a nationally recognized advocate for ethical hacking and student rights. Jessica's father had been sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, and the scandal had led to comprehensive reforms in how government databases were accessed and monitored. Maya's consulting business had evolved into a nonprofit organization dedicated to teaching cybersecurity skills to underrepresented youth and helping victims of online harassment. She had also co-authored new federal legislation requiring schools to implement stronger anti-bullying policies and protect student whistleblowers. As she walked off the stage, Maya pulled out her phone and saw a message from Sarah Martinez. "Watching your speech online, you're still my hero. Thank you for showing us that we don't have to be victims." Maya smiled, remembering the scared girl who had once been afraid to speak up about her harassment. Sometimes the most important victories weren't measured in lines of code or security vulnerabilities patched, but in the courage inspired in others to stand up for what was right. What do you think? Could you stand up to bullies like Maya did? Have you ever witnessed injustice and wondered if you had the courage to speak out? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that show us what's possible when we refuse to stay silent.